The Newberry Library exhibition, Mapping Outside the Lines, showcases how map makers have developed a wide variety of lines to bring our world to life. The exhibition features dozens of diagrams, drawings, engravings, and lithographs, the majority from the Newberry's map collections, which number in the hundreds of thousands. Mapping Outside the Lines is free, open to all, and runs through February 14th, 2026 at the Newberry Library. For more information, visit newberry.org. Every Chicagoan knows the Loop means business, and membership with the Chicago Loop Alliance can connect you with the powerful network of leaders and innovators helping shape the city's most visible district. As a member, you'll gain access to marketing opportunities, news, events, and neighborhood initiatives to highlight your business. Plus, you can make meaningful connections with peers, partners, and community stakeholders. Get connected at loopchicago.com/join. Today on CityCast Chicago. For over 100 years, Vienna beef has been synonymous with the Chicago hot dog, and it's without question one of Chicago's most recognizable logos. So, we sent a team deep undercover to see how the sausages are really made. It's Wednesday, November 5th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm here with CityCast Chicago's resident hot dog experts, social media manager Rick Homuth.
Pleasure to be here.
And newsletter editor Emmy Mack.
Hey, Chicago.
All right, y'all. So, Rick, you've been to Vienna Beef headquarters, the factory. You and Emmy went to Hot Dog University. You've talked to vendors. Just how prevalent is the Vienna Beef brand in the city?
So I was told that Vienna Beef supplies hot dogs to 90% of all locations that sell them in Chicagoland, which is a lot.
Ooh.
Of course, there's a few exceptions, but I think walking around town, that certainly passes the eye test, if you ask me, just given the amount of branding. And of course, when you factor in larger chains like Portillo's and ballparks and event venues that carry Vienna Beef, they are far and away the most popular source for hot dogs in Chicago.
You know, I know it's a privately owned company. Do we have a sense, like you say, 90%? Like, how much money is Vienna Beef bringing in off hot dogs and various items? Do we know?
They didn't give me a chance to look at the books, I guess. But I think basically, as far as I know, they're about half of their income and revenue stream is from hot dogs and sausages. Now, they do a lot of other things, too. They have a line of deli meats. You know, they have a whole pickle label that sells pickles to places like Jimmy John's that don't even have anything to do with hot dogs. Of course, there's Italian beef and mustard and sport peppers. So there's a lot of different aspects to the business, that I think they do because, of course, there's only so many Chicago hot dogs you can hope to move. That business model has a ceiling, of course, even though it is kind of expanding in places like Arizona and Florida and Texas. But I think also, given the nature of the fluctuating meat markets, they buy these bull meat trimmings, which kind of often includes brisket and things like that. It's not low quality stuff. So they are subject to the market in that way. So I think splitting up their revenue stream kind of helps them protect from different kind of marketing forces that might give them trouble if it was strictly hot dogs.
I mean, in a city of food allegiances, Emmy, a lot of Chicagoans who commented on Rick's video say they're loyal to the Vienna Beef brand. Are you one of those people?
I wouldn't have ever said I was a Vienna Beef hater. But when I listed out my favorite hot dog stands for an article that's on our website, I just happened to notice, wow, a lot of my favorite hot dog stands, a good handful, don't sell Vienna. So maybe I'm just naturally a hot dog hipster, but I think that a Chicago hot dog, to me, doesn't have to have Vienna Beef. That is how I feel. It's about the toppings. It's about the atmosphere of the place. It's about a good bite. But definitely, I'm a Vienna Beef appreciator, and even more so after going to Hot Dog University.
You know, how did Vienna Beef become synonymous with the Chicago hot dog? Because let them tell it. Emmy, you said earlier, a Chicago hot dog doesn't need Vienna Beef, but they wouldn't agree with that, right?
No, certainly not. I mean, I think they would say, and of course, this again serves their bottom line too, right? But they would say they've been synonymous with the hot dog since the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, right? Which, we can kind of think of as Chicago's cultural Big Bang, where Pabst got its blue ribbon and all this stuff happened. And so the two guys who started Vienna Beef had a booth at the World's Fair and did well enough that they started selling hot dogs on Maxwell Street, where due to the influence of different types of European immigrants in the neighborhood, the hot dog as a food item rolled around like kind of Katamari style, accumulating different toppings as it bounced off Italians and Greeks and Germans and so on. But then things really took off during the Great Depression when the hot dog kind of moved from this old world novelty that people had seen at the World's Fair to, hey, actually, times are tough right now and I could use something that's cheap and filling. So it took an even bigger step after World War II when, the post-war economy boomed and people who up until that point were kind of restricted to those ethnic enclaves decamped for the suburbs in the 40s and 50s. And at that point, Vienna Beef was really kind of poised to strike and, knew that people who are now in the burbs or in a different part of town had a taste for the hot dogs that they had kind of experienced in their youth or at a different time in their life. So they decided to kind of lean into the advertising and the marketing to sort of brand the Vienna Beef hot dog as the Chicago-style hot dog. Beyond that, they would even give out loans to people who wanted to open their own hot dog stand and would provide them with signage and decor that would just kind of help them get started, which is a brilliant plan in a lot of ways, because each time you kind of help somebody open their own place, you further increase the visual association people have between Vienna Beef and the Chicago dog, but also more than likely create a business partner for life and somebody who's just going to keep coming back to you.
I got to learn more about this HDU Hot Dog University experience. Obviously, Rick, you put together some amazing videos that people can go over to the CityCast Chicago Instagram, TikTok. If you want them last few mugs on Facebook every day, you can probably find them there as well. Emmy, what was your favorite part about Hot Dog University and how did it grow your love for Vienna Beef, given it's essentially like a really cool marketing strategy?
I'm always interested in hot dog lore, and our instructor, Bill Murphy, who ran his own hot dog stand, Murphy's Red Hots, for over 30 years, can't even open his mouth without, giving you a philosophical line about the way a hot dog can make somebody feel and how Vienna has a place in all of that history. I went for the second day of classes, so I missed some of the paperwork and studying that Rick got to do on day one.
Sure did.
So I went for the fun day where after kind of walking us through each step of creating what goes on a Chicago dog, cutting the tomatoes via the placenta, the right way to cut an onion, we had a griddle and we're sauteing onions for the Polishes for a long time. So you had that aroma in the room while he's kind of lecturing you, taking strings of connected hot dogs, pouring out of the box. After we went through every step of what goes into a classic Chicago hot dog, then as a class, we all got behind basically a functioning hot dog cart inside of the Vienna corporate headquarters and worked as an assembly line, getting all the hot dogs ready for the building's lunch rush. It felt very humbling and very Chicago to be serving everybody. They brought in people from the other buildings too. I was a little nervous because, you had Bill over your shoulder being like, that's too much mustard. But eventually I kind of got my sea legs. I think we all did. I don't know, Rick, I felt a little nervous.
Not me. No, I was born for it. I was ready for it.
Really?
I think the hot dog can sense whether or not you are pure of heart.
I think what's interesting about Vienna Beef is like I've driven past the factory. I didn't realize that there was a hot dog university, but I think like most Chicagoans, you come in contact with the signs, right? The product, not necessarily the factory. And most of the places that they are sold are out of someone else's store. Can you kind of talk about the omnipresent feel of the Vienna Beef logo and like marketing around the city?
Yeah, from a cynical perspective, I mean, one hand certainly washes the other, right? Like it is just branding. But I think one of the things that I kind of came to appreciate going into this is I think Vienna beef really kind of safeguards the tradition of independent fast food restaurants in Chicago. I think it obviously serves their bottom line fundamentally, but Bill had this great line when I was talking to him at Hot Dog University about, why they don't franchise, for instance, when they very easily could and do a sort of McDonald's thing. And he said, if it weren't for the vendors and the independent spirit and the differences you see in your favorite little hot dog joint across the city, we'd just be another Subway chain. And that's one of my favorite things about hot dog culture in Chicago is every stand's got a different little identity. Some of them are unique. Some of them are better than others. There isn't a standardization. There's these little quirks and eccentricities. And I think Vienna beef has, done a good job of making sure that that is allowed to thrive in this city.
November is Homelessness Awareness Month. Now, most of us know homelessness is a problem in Chicago. We see our neighbors sleeping in parks and bus stations, and we want to help. That's why in November, Deborah's Place is focused on raising awareness about what actually works. Permanent housing, not just overnight shelter, paired with supportive services. At Deborah's Place, that model, permanent supportive housing, has helped thousands of women find paths towards stability. When we can provide housing paired with necessary resources, our communities become safer and more livable for all Chicagoans. So learn more about events in the community and how you can support Deborah's Place at deborahsplace.org. "2026 will be here sooner than you think, which means it's already election season, my friends. And Chicago needs election judges for the March 17th primary. As an election judge, you'll help your neighbors cast their votes by setting up polling stations and answering voter questions. The requirements are you have to be a U.S. citizen and registered voter in Cook County. And if you also speak Spanish, Hindi, Polish, Korean, Chinese, or Tagalog, then they definitely need your help. Earn up to $230 and help your community on Election Day. Plus, high school juniors and seniors can also apply. So if you know a student with a 3.0 GPA and an interest in civics, then let them know. Head to pollworker.chicagoelections.gov or call 312-269-7984. How big is the company, the people who work at the university, the headquarters, the factory?
I don't have any hard and fast numbers on that, but the factory on the south side's pretty big. I mean, of course, they're putting together all the sausages and Polishes, but there's also, the soups, the chilies, the condiments and whatnot. The headquarters in Bucktown is not as big as it once was. It used to have the actual factory, but now they're in the process of kind of renovating the first floor so that it can eventually be a restaurant and things like that. There are people who cover distribution on the East Coast and the South and whatnot. So it's not a huge company by any means, but they certainly have a large footprint.
Obviously, long gone are the days of the Union stockyards. What was it like to go into the factory to kind of see the process through? And, now that you've gotten that little inside look, what did you learn about the way they, essentially design their hot dog, how it's different or unique from others?
Oh man, I got a big kick out of it. I think it was kind of like going to the Willy Wonka factory in a sense, except it was just a lot bloodier, perhaps. But no, it was super clean. It was. I think I said in the video there was a far cry from the bleak conditions that Upton Sinclair described in The Jungle, of course, the 1906 novel that put the stockyards on the map. But more than anything else, there was just something to me I found very charming about that still existing in this city. Oftentimes you kind of walk around and you see all these empty buildings and stuff. And it's just kind of like, boy, all this stuff that like made this city so big and so, made it the hog butcher of the world, made it the city of big shoulders, feels like it doesn't exist anymore. And I think you have to give them credit for keeping their operation in this city and saying, hey, no, this still does exist here. It is a thing. And who doesn't like seeing conveyor belts full of tube meats, right? Like at the end of the day.
I think we all accept that, like, who knows what's really in a hot dog, but I think y'all are the two people who got closest to the process. Obviously, I could go buy the package and look on the back, but what's in a Vienna beef hot dog?
Beef, water, salt, corn syrup, dextrose, mustard, natural flavorings and coloring, garlic juice, sodium aerosorbate, sodium nitrate, extractives of paprika, and sheep casing.
Okay, I understood most of that, I think.
I had it pulled up. So.
How do they kind of describe their flavor profile compared to maybe some of their competitors? Because, I know you could find like maybe a better seasoned dog somewhere else for show.
Yeah. So that's a point that Bill made, another one of those philosophical notes that Emmy mentioned whenever you talk to him is, the Vienna Beef Frank is in many ways much more neutral than some of the other ones on the market. He mentioned there were, incidents where people were kind of taste testing different sausages to figure out what they wanted to serve at their restaurant. And one of the competitors' products, if you're just eating it plain, might have a more, robust spice blend, or it might be more heavily seasoned than the Vienna Beef one. That said, he kind of described it as a blank canvas upon which, the Chicago dog condiments are painting their masterpiece, right? So you want something a little bit more neutral that will allow the mustard, the relish, the onions, the pickle, the tomato, the celery salt to kind of thrive.
Yeah, I'm going to give a hard disagree to that one. I know that's their way of going about it, but I prefer everything to be seasoned to its most perfect setting. That's what I would prefer for my dog.
That's fair.
Emmy, most of the people at Hot Dog University, is it fair to say that they were vendors, that they were people who were there to learn about running their own hot dog stands?
Maybe not necessarily a hot dog stand, but definitely they were food vendors. There were two people who ran a catering company in Tennessee. So I think they were curious about integrating Vienna products into what they offer. There was someone who wanted to open a hot dog trailer in Georgia. And then there was someone named Sonia who Rick went and visited at her cart. And she is basically doing her own style of being a hot dog entrepreneur.
She had a background selling hot dogs on the museum campus for like 10 years and decided she wanted to try her hand at opening her own cart, and is just so sweet and cheerful and fun to talk to that it really just, made perfect sense that somebody like her would start a hot dog cart. Although I will say, when I lived in Bridgeport, that was certainly not the attitude I received from people selling me hot dogs at 2 a.m. We went down, and so I went down to see her, and what I was just so taken by about her cart was the fact that, it kind of exists to serve the original goal of a hot dog cart, right? Which is to feed working class people, right? It's not dependent on tourists. It's not, it's just something that people return home from Scottsdale to, have a taste of their youth, although that's perfectly fine, right? But to me, it represented a return to form that I'm just really interested in. And I think, times are tough for everybody, small businesses certainly as well. So the fact that this is something you can still go out and do, to me, is just, there's a certain romance to that idea. And I think it, kind of deserves our support.
We had a couple of questions from people in the comments of the video. People wanted to know, can you go to Hot Dog University for fun, for shits and giggles?
You sure can. It's about $600 for both days, though. So those are going to be some expensive shits and giggles, I guess. If you're doing it for business reasons, there are rebates and things like that you can take advantage of, where you fill out a form and they'll get you $150 worth of signage or whatever, or you get a certain amount of dollars off the cases you buy for a certain period of time. So that will lessen the cost in the long run if you're serious about opening your business. But if you're doing it for fun, be prepared to shell out some cash. Although, honestly, given the amount of interest we've seen in the comments, if you got a big group together for, your bachelorette party or whatever, it wouldn't hurt to shoot them an email about a group rate.
People wanted to know, can you find Vienna beef outside of Chicago?
So they have sales reps and distribution networks that cover all 50 states, including Hawaii and Alaska. In theory, yeah, you can get it anywhere, but it's really more of a matter of like, if there's somebody willing to stock it, right? Because Vienna Beef doesn't operate their own stores. There's a really great interactive map on the website where you can go and see different places in the US that have locations in like Texas or Florida, or even in Oregon, I think, and places like that. So you just enter in your zip code and see where you can buy them either, from a restaurant or even from a grocery store.
Some people want to know why these particular toppings on a Chicago dog. Of course, those toppings being, well, you got the poppy seed bun, you got the mustard, you got the piccalilli, as my grandmother would call it. You got the pickle, sliced tomato, raw onions, celery salt, and the sports pepper.
So a big part of why the Chicago dog was like standardized to the extent that it was because of Vienna Beef's like marketing efforts in the post-war decades, right? And so they promoted the Chicago dog as a way of saying, hey, it's not a real Chicago dog unless it has this kind of bun or this kind of topping, and also has this kind of hot dog, which just so happens to be the one that we sell. So a lot of that was marketing. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think there's that famous axiom from Parks and Rec about Ron Swanson, the award winner, where everything he does is the attitude of an award winner because he's somebody who won an award. I think very similarly, you can kind of make the case that any hot dog sold in the city of Chicago is a Chicago style hot dog just by virtue of being sold in the city of Chicago. So I think, you know, most people would agree that the toppings are not as strict as, you know, some people make them out to be. Celery salt in particular, I think was added in like the 70s or something. So that's a pretty recent innovation as well.
That's my favorite part of a Chicago hot dog.
Oh yeah, can't skip it.
We sat down with Monica Eng and David Hammond, the authors behind Made in Chicago, stories behind 30 great hometown bites. And of course, the Chicago hot dog is on their list. And they talk about how different groups of immigrants participated and contribute to the hot dog over the years between the 20s and the 50s. And as somebody who has gone on record multiple times as a hater, I will say the best one I've had this year, and it's only because I probably only had like 3 or 4. I got at a restaurant called Neighbors out in Greensboro, North Carolina. And a Chicago chef works there. Absolutely loves it. It's a staple on their menu. And I can't tell you what exactly about it. They definitely had the Vienna beef sign. So I'm assuming they were using that, but I think they made their own buns. It was a damn good hot dog. And it kind of made me kind of pull back some of the hate that I've had over the years. I will say that, because I usually just like it plain with a little bit of ketchup and mustard.
Well, I'm glad to hear you've seen the light.
I know you going into this whole thing were kind of skeptical of the Vienna beef hype, the marketing machine. Has that changed since you did this series? You
know, I was sniffing around different hot dog vendors and I asked them about their relationship with Vienna beef, and you know, I can't think of anyone who said anything other than like, yeah, it's great. You know, they help us out. We work together. It's a good relationship. So it's not hard to imagine that, you know, if there wasn't this very strong brand of the Chicago style hot dog, you could see more of these places closing down as like interest in them kind of faded, and, you know, they were replaced by a small Cheval or whatever. But fortunately, that hasn't really happened. And I think a big part of that is because, you know, the Vienna beef has been so proactive with the branding stuff. And of course, yeah, that is at the end of the day for their bottom line, but it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
I think realizing what a stronghold, because, you know, I didn't know the numbers before attending Hot Dog University, almost makes me appreciate the places that don't sell Vienna that I love. And at the same time, I more than anything appreciate that we live in a city where there are more hot dog stands than McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King's combined. And yeah, that's thanks to Vienna. So I always a stone's throw away from a hot dog. I can always get a cheap, satisfying lunch, whether or not I'm, at one of my favorite places, like, for example, Bill's on Howard and Western, which uses a Leon's skinless number 8 garlic for their hot dogs, or Super Dog, also a more garlicky recipe. Theirs is made by a private manufacturer, very large. Fix and Frank's, aka the Home Depot dogs, which there's some debate about what they're using. The Trib says Mikowski's, which is, you know, a Bridgeport sausage maker.
Another 100-year-old company.
But then I've seen definitely Eisenberg signs at the Home Depot hot dog stand. So I'm just like not quite sure about that, but they're not using Vienna. Those are all excellent hot dogs that I return to again and again. But, you know, Jimmy's Red Hot's also a Vienna. They use Vienna, but theirs is a smaller, thinner sausage. So you can really take down 2 of those at 2 a.m, which is kind of my favorite one of my favorite places to go.
My favorite place to get a hot dog was usually Dan's off of 92nd, 93rd and Ashland. And they are most certainly Vienna beef. They got the table, umbrella, signs, neon light, like they got the full gear, all of the merch. Rick, your favorite place to get a hot dog in the city, is it a Vienna beef spot?
So my answer to this is the same as the answer I give when it comes to tavern style pizza and Italian beef, which is my favorite place in the city, or the best place in the city, is always going to be the one that's closest to your house or apartment that does it right. The fact that we just have so many of these options is itself a blessing and something that we need to defend at all costs. So I live very close to Jack's on Armitage and Central Park, and they're all, kitted out with the Vienna beef stuff too. And they make a hell of a dog there as well. I'm pretty close to Jimmy's as well, so I love that spot. But to me, the best hot dog will always come from the place that you live closest to or have the most fond memories of.
I love Jack's. So Jack's is one of my favorites.
Jack's is great. Shout out Jack.
Jack's is so satisfying.
I feel like when we pitched this story, like a lot of the drive was to kind of get behind the scenes of Vienna beef. Like, oh my God, they are everywhere. Why are they everywhere? But Emmy, a lot of your passion comes from, you just love a good hot dog, a good Chicago dog. Why are you such a hot dog evangelist?
Like evangelicals, I guess. It's the way that I was raised. Like, for example, I keep bringing up Bill's just because I think it is my go-to hot dog, and it's so different from a Vienna. It's skinless. It's almost slimy going down the throat. I find it addictive. And that's on Howard and Western, where right where it turns into Evanston. I grew up going there with my dad, and we were always so curious, like, what kind of hot dog is this? Because they don't sell hot dogs like that at most places. It's a very pale hot dog. So this is also where my kind of like Vienna skepticism probably arose from. And so we kind of just sat out in the parking lot for a few hours one day. And eventually we did see the truck coming in to give them their delivery. And so that's how we found out what company they were using. And then we called and kind of acted like we were Bill's and tried to figure out exactly what sausage they were using. And then for my 8th grade graduation party that year, my dad bought like maybe 200 of the exact kind of hot dogs that Bill's makes and just really went all hot dog university with it, created an assembly line in the kitchen, had a paper hat on, steamed every bun perfectly steamed, Bill would have approved, and was serving up like 100 hungry 8th graders who were throwing water balloons at each other. And every single person was like, oh my God, this is such a good hot dog. So yeah, that's one of my favorite hot dog memories.
That's like a WGN Hallmark movie. You call it Let's Be Frank or something.
For all of my hate, the Chicago hot dog is really more than the sum of its parts. I want to give a huge thank you to our guests today, our hot dog experts. I can say with pretty much 100% certainty, we have talked more about hot dogs since the two of you were hired, since the years before y'all came on board. And I will say I'm very grateful for that. Our social media manager, Rick Homuth, always a good time.
Yeah, thanks.
And make sure you're following along with Hey Chicago newsletter editor Emmy Mack every day in your inbox. Emmy, always a pleasure.
Thanks, Jacoby.
Before we get out of here, we want to hear from you. Where is your favorite place to get a Chicago dog? Is it Vienna beef? If you got thoughts, reach out to us at 773-780-0246. And make sure you're following along with Hey Chicago at chicago.citycast.fm. And while you're there, stick around for a little bit. Check out our events calendar. Follow the pipeline to our Instagram and our TikTok and show Rick some love. And of course, be back here bright and early tomorrow. I know what you're thinking. Kobe, how you wrapping up? You ain't gave us some good news. A couple of my favorite monthly events are back this week, including Pueblo Market in Pilsen tonight from 7 to 10 and Big Kids Show tomorrow at Dorian's. I'll drop a link for both of these in the show notes. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. This time I'm for real. I'll be back bright and early tomorrow. Peace.
I wish you would sign off with goodbye, Chicago,
I could try. Goodbye, Chicago.